Ferrari just declared war on Mercedes, but not on track, in the courtroom. And what's even crazier, 3 teams have joined forces to ban Mercedes' new engine before testing even starts in Bahrain. Why? Because this engine might be too legal to be fair. It uses a thermal trick that could deliver up to 15 extra horsepower, while staying perfectly within the rules. And the result? A 3/10 advantage every single lap. That's enough to win races, even with a slower car. And if this isn't stopped now, the championship could be over before race 1. So the question is, should the FIA ban it today? Or will they let Mercedes run away with everything? Stick around, because what's happening behind closed doors right now could change the future of Formula One forever. And if you're not here for the next 5 minutes, you'll miss the part no one else is talking about. So hit subscribe, and let's dive into the chaos. Everyone knew 2026 was going to be different. New engines, new rules, a total reset for Formula One. But no one expected the reset to trigger a civil war, because while teams were focused on chassis design, Mercedes was doing something else. Something quiet. Behind the doors of their Brixworth facility, engineers were working on a concept most teams didn't even consider possible. They weren't trying to make the most powerful engine on paper. They were trying to build the smartest engine inside the grayest part of the rulebook. And here's how they pulled it off. The 2026 regulations capped the compression ratio at 16:1, lower than before, intended to reduce combustion dominance and favor electric power. But one line changed everything. Compression must be measured at room temperature. That detail? Buried in paragraph C5.4.3. And that's the line Mercedes used to turn the sport upside down. Now listen to this. When Formula One engine gets hot, really hot, its internal components expand. We're talking temperatures over 100 degrees Celsius. At that heat, even steel breathes. And Mercedes designed parts that expand perfectly under that pressure. Just half a millimeter of movement. That's all it takes. And suddenly, a 16:1 engine becomes an 18:1 engine in real conditions. That means more compression, more energy, more power, while staying completely legal during the FIA static test. And here's where the numbers get scary. Independent analysis estimates this trick is worth up to 15 horsepower. That's a 3/10 advantage per lap. Across an entire race, that's over 17 seconds gained without touching aerodynamics or strategy. Now pause and think about that. In a sport where 1/10 decides pole position, Mercedes might be starting every race with a full sector in their pocket. And that's exactly why Ferrari's furious. But that's not all, because Mercedes didn't just build this engine for themselves. They're supplying 3 other teams: McLaren, Williams, and Alpine. So this loophole isn't just powering one car, it's powering half the grid. Which means, if it's legal, Mercedes controls the season. And if it's banned, for teams are in trouble before Bahrain even begins. And this is only the beginning. So what do you do when your rivals find a loophole you never saw coming? If you're Ferrari, you call backup. And that's exactly what they did. In a move almost unheard of in Formula One politics, 3 manufacturers, Ferrari, Honda, and Audi, have formed a secret alliance. Not to beat Mercedes on track, but to stop them before the lights even go out in Bahrain. Here's how far it's gone. Formal letters sent to the FIA, private meetings in Geneva, and insiders say they're preparing an official protest before the first race even starts. But why is Ferrari leading the charge? Simple, because they've seen this movie before. Back in 2019, Ferrari exploited a similar gray area. Their fuel flow sensor allowed them to bypass restrictions and gain massive power. The FIA shut it down mid-season, without ever releasing the full report. The result? Ferrari's performance collapsed overnight. No podiums, no pace, no answers. And now, in 2026, they're watching the FIA allow Mercedes to do something even more controversial, and saying, why is it different this time? That's not just frustration, it's rage. Because Ferrari believes this new engine doesn't just bend the rules, it breaks the spirit of the regulations. The rule was clear: reduce combustion dominance. Force teams to rely on electrification. Mercedes found a way to do the opposite, while still passing every technical check. That's what scares the other manufacturers. Not that Mercedes cheated, but that they might be too clever to catch. And here's where things get even more complicated. Because Audi, they're not just protesting as a rival. They're new to the sport, and they're already convinced the game is rigged. They've barely had time to build their own engine. And now they're staring down a rival with a year-long head start and a technical loophole no one else can replicate. Then there's Honda, supplying Aston Martin. They were expecting to fight for podiums in 2026. Now, they're worried they'll be fighting for scraps unless something changes. So the coalition's message is clear. If this loophole isn't shut down now, the season is already over, and the real battle won't be fought in Bahrain. It'll be fought in conference rooms, with lawyers, with regulations, with politics, and just wait until you hear how Mercedes plans to respond, because that is where things take a turn. Do you want to continue into Mercedes' counterattack and legal threat? Or should we go into the FIA's impossible position and timing before Bahrain? Both are explosive. While Ferrari, Honda, and Audi were calling for bans, Mercedes was doing the exact opposite. They were getting louder, more confident, and far more aggressive. Toto Wolff didn't hide behind press releases. He stood on stage during the W17 launch and fired back, directly, at everyone. The rules are clear. The engine is legal. If your teams aren't fast enough, maybe spend less time complaining and more time innovating. Those were his words, and he meant every one of them. Because from Mercedes' point of view, this engine is not a loophole. It's engineering brilliance. They built it openly. They showed it to the FIA. They passed every check. And now that it works, their rivals want to rewrite the rules? Mercedes says, too late. And here's what most fans don't realize. The moment the FIA approved the engine in cold testing, that became Mercedes' legal shield. Because any change now wouldn't just affect Mercedes. It would affect McLaren, Williams, Alpine, for teams, half the grid, millions in engine deals, months of planning, thousands of components already built. If the FIA bans it now, they risk triggering a corporate lawsuit from Mercedes-Benz itself. And that's not speculation, because Ola Kalinius, the CEO of Mercedes-Benz Group, is watching. And according to multiple reports, he's ready to go nuclear if the FIA tries to move the goalposts. Legal teams are already preparing. Letters have been exchanged. This isn't just a sporting dispute anymore. It's a corporate threat, one that could shatter the FIA's authority if it backfires. So now the pressure shifts, because if the FIA touches that rule, they risk opening the biggest legal war Formula One has seen in decades. And if they don't, they risk letting one team walk away with the title before Bahrain even begins, which leaves them with one option: delay everything, push the decision to later, let the season start, and hope things don't explode. But the next meetings are happening right now, and just wait until you hear what the FIA plans to do after the Bahrain test, because if that leaks, it's going to get ugly, fast. Right now, all eyes are on the FIA, because they're not just a referee in this story. They're the target, the scapegoat, and maybe the ones who made the biggest mistake of all, because they approved the engine. They signed off on the testing protocol. They allowed the phrase room temperature to define the rules. And now, they're realizing what it actually means. If the compression ratio is only measured cold, then Mercedes and potentially Red Bull have found a back door. One the FIA never meant to leave open. But here's the trap. If they admit it was a mistake, they admit the regulations were flawed. They admit Mercedes outsmarted them. And that's a level of embarrassment the FIA can't afford. Not now. Not with teams threatening legal action. Not with public trust on the line. So what are they doing? They're stalling. Behind the scenes, emergency meetings have already begun. The FIA gathered with all engine manufacturers in the first days of February. They didn't ban anything. They didn't change any rules. Instead, they promised to evaluate the situation and consider new testing procedures. But not for now. Not for Bahrain. Not for Melbourne. Maybe for 2027. That's the current position. And that's what has Ferrari absolutely livid. Because they know what this means. The FIA isn't going to act before the season begins, which gives Mercedes a window. A huge one. If the engine really is worth 3/10 per lap, they could dominate the first 6 or 7 races. Build a points gap so big, no regulation change could reverse it. And by the time the FIA updates the rules, the championship could be mathematically over. That's not paranoia. That's the risk. And Ferrari knows it. But the FIA also knows something else. If they ban the engine today, they create chaos for teams without a legal power unit. Lawsuits from Mercedes, backlash from fans, A total meltdown in public trust. So the FIA is trapped. Let play out and hope it evens out. Or intervene now and face corporate war. And just wait, because in Bahrain, the whole world will be watching. And that is where everything could finally come undone. Bahrain, it's no longer just a test. It's a battlefield. And in a few days, every secret, every whisper, every theory will be exposed. Because this time, it's not a private session behind closed doors. It's public, with timing screens, media, live coverage, and pressure at full volume. There's no hiding now. And here's why Bahrain matters more than ever. It's hot, brutally hot, with track temperatures soaring above 40 degrees Celsius. These are the perfect conditions to activate Mercedes' so-called trick. Thermal expansion, compression changes, power delivery at maximum output. This is the test that will show whether the M17 engine is just clever on paper or truly unstoppable in real-world racing. And what happens if Mercedes dominates? Not just fast laps, but sector after sector, effortless top speeds, long runs with no drop-off, for teams consistently faster than the rest. That's the moment this goes from protest to crisis. Because if Ferrari, Audi, and Honda are right, Mercedes won't just be quick. They'll be out of reach. And the problem is this. Bahrain is only a test. No one can protest a lap time. No one can challenge a setup. But they can see the writing on the wall. And if the data confirms what many engineers fear, that Mercedes has built a power unit that behaves differently under heat, then what? Does the FIA act? Do rivals file official complaints before Melbourne? Or do they wait? Watch. Hope it fails. But what if it doesn't fail? What if Mercedes is faster and more reliable? What if McLaren, already champion for 2 seasons, starts opening a gap in lap 1? What if Alpine, a brand new Mercedes client, suddenly jumps 5 positions in pace? Then it's not just about Mercedes. It's about everyone they power. And that's the twist most people are missing. Because Mercedes is not alone. If they win, for teams win. If the engine gets banned, for teams collapse. That's why Bahrain is the turning point. Because when those lap times start coming in, there will be no more speculation, only answers. And once the truth is out, the political war begins.